Welcome to Reading with Nana, and hi to my returning friends. Today we're going to read Chapter 5 of Heidi, the novel by Johanna Spyri. Two visitors. 2 winters had nearly passed. Heidi was happy, for the spring was coming again and the soft, supple wind that made the fir trees roar. Soon she would be able to return to the pasture, where the blue and yellow flowers would meet her at every step. She was nearly 8 years old, and she had learned to care for the goats, who would run after her like little dogs. On several occasions, the village teacher had sent word by Peter that the child was missed at school, but the old man had not paid any attention to the messages and kept her at home with him as before. It was a beautiful morning in March. The snow had melted on the slopes and was disappearing fast. Snowdrops were peeping through the ground, which were getting ready for growing seed in the spring. Heidi was running to and fro at the door of the cottage when suddenly an old gentleman, dressed in black, appeared standing beside her. As she reacted in a frightened manner, he said kindly, "You must not be afraid of me, for I love children. Give me your hand, Heidi, and tell me where I might find your grandfather." "He is inside, making round wooden spoons," the child replied, opening the door for the gentleman as he spoke. It was the old pastor of the village, who had known the grandfather for many, many years ago. Upon entering, he greeted the old man. "Good morning, neighbor." The grandfather arose, surprised. He offered a seat to the visitor and replied, "Good morning, Mr. Pastor. Here is a wooden chair. I hope it is good enough." Sitting down, the pastor said, "It has been a long time since I have seen you, neighbor. I have come today to talk over a matter with you. I am sure you can guess what it is about." The clergyman looked at Heidi, who was standing near the door. "Heidi, run out to see the goats," said the grandfather, "and take them some salt. You can stay there until I come." Heidi disappeared out the door. "The child should have come to school a year ago," the pastor went on to say. "Didn't you get the teacher's warning? What do you intend to do with the child?" "I do not want her to go to school," said the old man, unrelenting. The visitor looked surprised at the old man, who was sitting on his bench with his arms crossed and a determined expression about his face. "How are you going to let her grow up?" he asked. "I'm going to let her grow up and be happy among the goats and the birds. With them she is safe, and she will learn nothing evil. But the child is not a goat or a bird. She is a human being. Though she may learn no evil from her comrades, she will at the same time learn nothing. She ought not to grow up in ignorance. It is time that she began her lessons. I have come now that you may have time to think it over and to make arrangements over the summer months. Next winter, she must come regularly to school every day." "She will do no such thing," said the old man with calm determination. "Will you not be persuaded by reasoning at all, such that will continue to stubbornly hold to this decision?" said the pastor, feeling a little irritation. "You have been about the world, and surely you have seen and learned much. I should have given you credit for more sense, neighbor." "Indeed," replied the old man, betraying a little irritation himself. "Does the worthy pastor really wish that I should send a young child like that some miles down the mountain on ice-cold mornings through storm and snow, and then wait for her to return at night while the wind is raging, when even an adult may be buried in snow?" Perhaps he may have forgotten the child's mother, Adelaide, was a sleepwalker, and she suffered fits. What if the child suffers such attacks if she were to overexert herself, and someone thinks they can come and force me to send her to school? I will go before all the courts of justice in the country, and then we shall see who will force me to do it." "You are quite right, neighbor," said the pastor in a friendlier tone of voice. "I see it would have been impossible to send the child to school from here, but I perceive that the child is dear to you. For her sake, you should do what you ought to have done long ago. Come down into Dorothy and live again among your fellowmen. What sort of a life is this you lead here by yourself, with bitter thoughts towards God and man? If anything were to happen to you up here, who would come to help you? I cannot think but that you must be half frozen to death in this hut during the winter, and I do not know how the child lives through it. The child has young blood in her veins and a good roof over her head. And furthermore, let me tell the pastor that I know where wood is to be found and when it is the proper time to fetch it. The pastor may go and look inside my woodshed. The fire is never out in my hut the whole winter through. As far as living in the village goes, that is not even a consideration. The people despise me and I them. It is therefore best for all of us that we live apart. No, no, that is not best for you. I know what it is you lack, said the pastor in an earnest voice. As to the people down there who look upon you with dislike, it is not as bad as you think. Believe me, neighbor, seek to make your peace with God. Pray for his forgiveness where you need it. And then come and see how differently people will look upon you and how much happier you could be. The pastor stood up and held out his hand to the old man as he spoke with even more earnestness. I will wager, neighbor, that next winter you will come down among us again, and we shall be good neighbors as of old. I should be very grieved if any pressure had to be put upon you. Give me your hand and promise me that you will come and live with us again and become reconciled with God and man. The uncle gave the pastor his hand and answered him calmly and firmly. You mean well by me, I know, but as to that which you wish me to do, I say now what I shall continue to say, that I will not send the child to school nor come and live among you. Then God help you, said the pastor. And sadly, he turned away and left the hut and departed down the mountain. The old man was in a sour mood for the rest of the day, and when Heidi begged him to go to visit the grandmother, he only muttered, "Not today." The next day, they had hardly finished their dinner when another visitor arrived. It was Heidi's Aunt Detta. She wore a hat with feathers and a dress with such a train that it swept up everything that lay on the cottage floor. While the uncle stared at her silently, Detta started in, praising him and commending the child's healthy red cheeks. She had told him that it had not been her intention to leave Heidi with him for so long because she knew the little one would be an inconvenience to him. She explained that she had tried to provide for the child elsewhere, and at last she had found a splendid opportunity for her. The provision came by very rich relations of her lady. This family owned the largest house in Frankfurt, and their poor lame daughter, was confined to a wheelchair, and they needed a companion for her. Data had heard from them that they were looking for a sweet, quaint child who could be a playmate and schoolmate for the invalid. Data had spoken with the housekeeper about Heidi, and the lady was delighted with the idea, instructing her to fetch the child at once. So that was the purpose of her visit, for this was a wonderful opportunity for Heidi, for one never knew what might happen to such a one as Heidi, and who could tell? Are you finished yet? The old man interrupted her at last. Why you act as if I have come up with some ridiculous idea? Let me tell you, there is not a man in Pratigan who would not thank God for such news. Take the news to somebody else, but not to me, said the uncle coldly. Detta responded in hot anger. Do you want to hear what I think? Don't I know how old she is? 8 years old, and she is ignorant of everything. They have told me that you refuse to send her to church and to school. She is my only sister's child, and I shall not bear it, for I am responsible. You do not care for her. How else could you be indifferent to such a wonderful opportunity as this? You had better give way, or I shall get the people in the village to defend me on this. If I were you, I would not have brought it to court. Some things of the past might be brought back up that you would not care to hear about. Be quiet, the uncle thundered, his eyes flaming red. Take her and ruin her if you must, but never come back here again. I do not want to see this head covered with the feather hat or hear these words you have spoken ever again. With that, he strode out of the hut. You made him angry, said Heidi with a furious look. He won't be upset for long, but come now. Where are your things? Asked Detta. I won't come, Heidi replied. What? Detta said impatiently, but quickly changing her tone, she continued in a more friendly manner. Come now. You don't understand me. I'm taking you to the most beautiful place you have ever seen. Then, packing up Heidi's clothes, she said again, Come, child, and take your hat. It was not a very nice hat, but we can't help that now. I shall not come, was the reply. Don't be stupid and obstinate like a goat. Listen to me. Grandfather is sending us away, and we must do what he says, or he will get more angry still. You will see how fine it is in Frankfurt. If you do not like it, you can come home again, and by that time, Grandfather will have forgiven you. Can I come home tonight? Asked Heidi. Come now. I promised that you could come back. If we get to Mayenfeld today, we can take the train tomorrow. Then you will be able to come right back again very, very soon. Carrying the bundle in one arm, Detta led the child down the mountain. On their way, they met Peter, who had missed school that day. The boy thought it would be a more useful occupation to look for hazel rods rather than to learn to read. It was evident that he had had a most successful day, for he was carrying an enormous bundle of the rods upon his shoulder. When he caught sight of Heidi and Detta, he asked them where they were going. I am going to Frankfurt with Aunt Detta, Heidi replied. But first I must see grandmother, for she is waiting. Oh no, it is too late now. You can see her when you come back, but not now, said Detta, pulling Heidi along with her. She was afraid that the old woman might detain the child. Peter ran into the cottage and dropped the rods on the table. The grandmother jumped up in fright, and she asked him what this meant. They have taken Heidi away, Peter said with a groan. Who has taken her, Peter? Where has she gone? The unhappy grandmother asked. Brigida had seen Detta walking up the footpath a short while ago, and they quickly realized what had happened. With a trembling hand, the old woman opened the window and called out as loudly as she could, Detta, Detta, don't take the child away. Don't take her from us. When Heidi heard grandmother's voice, she struggled to free herself from Detta's grip, telling her aunt, I must go to grandmother. She is calling me. But Detta would not let her go. She kept urging her on by promising that they would return soon enough. She also suggested that Heidi might bring a lovely present to the grandmother when she came back. Heidi was agreeable to this plan, and so she followed Detta without any more argument. After a while, she asked, What shall I bring to the grandmother? You might bring her some soft white rolls, Heidi. I think the black bread is too hard for poor grandmother to eat. Yes, I know it is, Aunt. She always gives the black bread to Peter, Heidi confirmed her. We must quickly go now. We might get to Frankfurt today, so I can come back tomorrow with the rolls. Heidi was running now, and Detta had to follow. She was glad enough to escape the questions that the people from the village might want to ask. As long as Heidi was pulling her along, she would say to them, I can't stop now. Don't you see how the child is hurrying? We still have a long way to go. Wherever she heard the questioning from all the sides. Are you taking her with her? Is she running away from Uncle? What a wonderful she is still alive. What red cheeks she has, too. Soon, the two had escaped, and the village was left far behind them. From that time on, the uncle looked more angry than ever whenever he would come to the village. Everybody was afraid of him, and the women would warn their children to stay out of his sight. He came down but seldom, and then only to sell his cheese and buy his provisions. Often people remarked how good it was that Heidi had left him. They had seen her rushing away, so they assumed that the little girl was happy to go. Only the blind grandmother would speak well of him. She told those who came to bring her work or to take away what she had spun how kind and thoughtful he had been with the child, how good to her and her daughter, and how many afternoons he had spent mending the house. She told them if it had not been for his help, the hut would certainly have fallen down over their heads by this time. And all this was repeated down in Dorfli. But most of the people who heard it said that grandmother was too old to understand what had happened and very likely had not rightly heard what was said. The uncle did not come to visit the grandmother's house anymore. It was well that he had made it so safe, for nothing was done to repair the house for a long time. Once again, the days were sad for the blind old woman, and every day she would say, "Alas, all our happiness has gone with the child, and now the days are so empty and long. I pray God that I might see Heidi again once more before I die." Now Heidi has gone to Frankfurt and left grandfather and grandmother. Let's see what new adventures she has with the little girl in the wheelchair. Click like or subscribe. Until next time.